Alrighty, well, cool. So I know you and I think it was on Metadata's community where I saw this really cool visual that you put out, and I absolutely loved it. And we actually have something internal that looks kind of similar when we're trying to organize targeting, themes, messages, content, and channels, specifically as results to paid. And for those that can't clearly see the visual, because I'm not showing it right now, I'll definitely make sure to link it in the notes or shoot it out on a LinkedIn post or something like that. But I thought it was really good. And clearly the execution of it's a lot harder, like you and I have talked about a bunch. And so I think we wanted to dig through that. And so I'll kind of give my maybe thought real quick of like, what is this real quick? And then maybe I'll throw it back to you and see if I nailed it. But it's really, it's almost bigger than a campaign brief. We're not talking about the traditional thing that marketers fill out. I mean, this is really almost something that a head of product marketing or something, or even the CEO would have in their hands when saying, all right, this is who we're going after. Here are the core themes that we want to communicate over a quarter or a year's time frame. Here are the core value props or pain points that we want to make sure that people know us for. Here are the content that aligns with those things that we just outlined. And then here are the channels where our audience is hanging out, where we want to ultimately, them to see that message. And so I don't know what you called it in that visual. What was it again? You had a name for it or something, right? It was called something.
I did. And actually, Jonathan, I need to pull it up. Sorry. 1 second.
What visual are we talking about again?
Please hold as I pull up the Figma file that I actually have public. I don't know. I didn't think of pulling this up before, so I apologize.
You're all good. You're all good.
The campaign hierarchy. Okay, cool. Good. I'm ready. We can segue into that again.
Good. Well, so tell me, maybe give like your 2 cents on like, why did you even create it? Was this something, I think you created it, right? I mean, was this for Mixpanel? Was this for another company? Have you just had this for the years and it was something that's been working well for you? But maybe like describe it just so people kind of understand what in the world we're about to talk about. And then we can kind of break down the different layers in a bit.
Yeah. So I definitely, I think with marketing, everything is sort of borrowed and evolved, and it's just like you kind of take a lot of these pieces. So I'm definitely not the first person to kind of lay out a campaign hierarchy template what I shared. But I will say, so kind of the origin story behind this actually happened back at my time at Optimizely, where the org was going through this like pivotal moment of really getting crisp on what the segments were. And a lot of work, I think, like you said, like from the product marketing team, where you kind of have to take that lead of like, we have to really understand how our product serves our different audiences. And so that turned into this like huge cross-functional, cross-team, like collaboration, working and building off of this like campaign hierarchy. And how are we going to build the initiatives as a marketing team to help us support the goals that we're trying to hit, the messages we're trying to land across the markets. And so it was actually pivotal to kind of see that being from like a contributing place where we're building it for the first time, to then now I've kind of taken elements of this framework into the different companies I've been at since Optimizely, both in the analytics space, and especially kind of now at Mixpanel, but all of them centered around this focus of when you build a campaign strategy, it has to be so centered and so bought into from your cross-functional partners, whether that's with product marketing, whether that's with the product team as a whole. A lot of us in this B2B SaaS space, our product is typically, it's that lockstep that you build with those orgs, with our design team, with just sort of everyone kind of coming together and understanding when we're going to invest like energy in building out this positioning, this messaging, this actual, like we're going to allocate dollars to it. What this framework helps visualize is, where does it, like at the very top of this, like who is this for? Who is our product for? Exactly. And then it frames that mindset for, okay, this is how I know we can all plug in and like kind of help build these programs and these campaigns underneath it. And okay, under this campaign are the different tactics. And so I think the other reason it's really helpful to have just like this framework is a lot of the times, and we know this as marketers, like it's so easy to use your tactics as like the strategy.
Yep.
And that's kind of like my like second favorite, like that's like the follow-up like number one reason why I love having a framework. It's just like removing the mentality of using marketing tactics as a strategy. That's not the strategy. That is the way in which you're going to communicate. But it's like,
Exactly.
okay, but let me tell you, like when you connect these tactics together up into a single campaign, you're kind of threading this into a
Hmm.
program. You're threading it because you're under this theme of how you're going to get your product into this ICP segment.
So true.
And so in demand gen, like what the reason I really love kind of, I've now been in these demand gen roles specifically for the last 5, 6 years. It's been about how do I thread this single message, or not a single message, but how do I thread this message
Hmm.
to my ICP, explaining them why this product is for them? How do I meet them at their pain points? How do
Hmm.
I offer the unique value propositions? And then how do I now I use that as a structure to how I build the marketing campaigns that fall underneath that. And
Yeah.
so, like you said, it's not me coming up with that positioning and value prop
Sure.
messaging and all that, but it's using this framework to get the buy-in of like why I actually need that support from PMM, from the PM team and the likes. So
Right.
that's kind
Well, I
of how
think
I've been using it.
Oh, agreed. Well, no, I love it because I think it's also important because it's really organizing things, not just from a campaign perspective, but making sure that whatever the GTM motion is and what all the leaders of the company have said, hey, these are the core things we want to communicate, that everything lines back up with that. Because, so often, I mean, I always see this where you've got these situations to your point where, yeah, people are just trying tactics and it's easy to look at LinkedIn posts and stuff. Hey, 300% increase by running a conversation ad campaign on LinkedIn. And it's like, okay, like that's a tactic inside a broader strategy. And sure, maybe like that actually captured the lead, but it wasn't that itself that did that, right? There were a whole number of
Right.
things that were part of that campaign that were bigger than the one campaign. They were tied into something bigger. So I think the organization of it, but let's break it down. So I think the layers really are you've got targeting, theme, programs, campaigns, and these aren't your exact names, and then channels, obviously, the bottom. And we're not just talking about paid, obviously, only, because we want to make sure all the channels are communicating across, whether it be email, organic, paid, etc., communities, even Slack,
Yeah.
whatnot, are all aligned. So I think targeting is an interesting one, and we could probably, like I was saying before we even started recording, we could probably spend the whole entire episode talking about just targeting, but we're going to try not to, or I'll try to keep us on track the best I can here. But the big thing for me, just to give like my quick 2 cents, then I'll kind of pass it back to you and you can tell me what you think here. But the big thing that I see all the time with SaaS companies is, your TAM isn't your ICP. And, you get these people that get all overjoyed and excited. Hey, I've got this massive amount of accounts or massive market that I want to go after. It's usually what you put in your investor deck. You sold, that's how you got the,
Yep.
10, 20, $50 million. And that's great. And maybe that's the $1 billion opportunity. But we as marketers generally we don't have endless budgets. We don't have endless teams to execute and create content and messaging for all these different segments that may be in that TAM. So we need to kind of get scrappy and focus and figure out, all right, what actually defines my ICP? Because for me, like that's always the biggest thing is if you miss targeting, you don't spend enough time there on the top, literally everything below just crumbles because you don't know who you're going after. You don't
Absolutely.
know, you can't create great content because you didn't really know who it was for in the first place. You're just creating stuff maybe based off of keyword volume or whatnot. And so I'll stop myself there. But to me, like that's the one thing that always just stands out with regards to targeting. But maybe you could walk me through like what's your within the visual and kind of what you had in mind, what that means to you.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And that's, I'm really on the same page there. It's really at the focus segment. And the purpose of this template is actually you build these for each of those segments. Again, they
Hmm.
shouldn't be, there typically is more than one ICP segment within these, but
Right.
it's about really getting close on how is your product going to solve this for this person.
Right.
And like you just said, it's like in the TAM, it's like all of the secondary users, all the tertiary users, like
Hmm.
there's so many different levers to like how your product gets into the hands of its users within companies.
Right.
And again, especially in B2B SaaS, right? And so with the focus ICP segment as like the targeting focus, what we try to do is use that to guide us as to how are we going to create this like end to end initiative, this end-to-end campaign that's going to be specifically for that person that is trying to solve for X problem. Sure. And so that's typically why this, a lot of this, like the targeting decisioning, it comes from a place of working with your product marketing, corporate marketing. We had on our side here at Mixpanel, like we had the VP of corporate marketing. He was working on like the perceptions, like what are the perceptions of the people in this, in these roles? What are the misperceptions that they have? Like, how do we change that? How do we kind of just start like threading out, okay, if at Mixpanel we have the product team, how do we want to approach their pain points, their problems? Honestly, from that point, you can then start saying, oh, like that's actually still a really big segment. Like there's an opportunity for us to get even more narrow and specific. Now we can go into industry. Now we can go under level of awareness stage. And so essentially what we start doing is at the targeting level, which is again at the very top of how we build this campaign hierarchy, we start to kind of decide where, like, and again, like you said, it has to be sort of almost like a company level strategic decision. Like, where do we want, like, where are we investing? Yeah. How are we going to solve for these? And like, what's the priority? Because that's actually the other thing. It's forcing you to prioritize. Where are you going to be investing this cross-functional team's effort into what you put out? Because there's only so much time, and we all know, especially I think in this economy, in this sort of macroeconomic situation we all kind of find ourselves in, it is all about getting very specific about who your product is for and how you want to talk to those people. And so I think that's...
Let me interrupt you on that because you said something interesting. But I mean, do you think you can get too specific too early with regards to segmentation? Do you think there's any rules or like challenges around that? Because I think there's a lot of times you can kind of go too far one direction, right? You can be too broad, you can also be too narrow, but you may disagree.
No, I agree. And I think that's, it has to be a balancing game with where your company is, right? Somewhere like Mixpanel, been around since 2009. There is just many, like there's a lot of there's a lot of legacy, just companies like we've always been product-led growth for the most part, typically I think for the most part had a free plan available. Seen a lot of different users come in and out through the product. So for us now, like it makes more sense that some of the campaigns that we're building out get very specific in terms of who we want to go after. But as a direct example, at my previous company where I was sort of, again, building from the ground up this demand framework through this campaign hierarchy, it was still early enough that, they hadn't established a demand gen engine. There was a need to actually start pulling together those different messages. It's like, okay, great, we had positioning, but let's now start pressure testing this positioning. And so you kind of build your way of like making sure your foundation, I'm always going to be a believer of, if your foundation is not in place, then like focus on that.
100%.
Focus on that.
Yeah. Everyone will agree with you on that point. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. So it's like before you start experimenting with going very specific, I definitely think that you have to look at, okay, at a general sense, like at the campaigns that we are running for like product teams as a whole, for marketers as a whole, are they performing at what we need? And it's actually, I think the way that I see it is getting specific is a result of the optimizations you want to make. You say, okay, great, I understand now XYZ about my targeting, like where can I move the needle? Do I have an opportunity? Am I seeing patterns that maybe like now I want to test these industries or however?
Right. I agree. The other thing I'd say too, to what you just said as well is, you can't really start to segment too much until you actually have content and messaging that's appropriate to those segments. And I see a lot of people sometimes just segment a whole bunch of campaigns with the same message in it. And from a reporting perspective, I guess it breaks it down a little bit, or if you've got a specific budget allocation, but it really does no good if you're just giving the same message to every single person. So you're in a better situation if you can just really narrow down and say, all right, this is who this is for. And, you're looking at a lot of times historical data, and this isn't just from the ad channel. If it's paid ads, this is looking at your CRM, understanding the market, talking to customers, and all the good things we need to be doing as marketers. And of course, this isn't just a marketing thing, like you said. This is product marketing. It's product. It's the CEO. It's the CFO. It's everyone there that has to be in line with ultimately what we're doing. So I feel like it's another thing that I see is a lot of people just want to do, let's segment everything and do all sorts of things. Okay, well, do we have messaging specific to those different groups that we're going to be pushing out? Otherwise, it's just the same stuff, you know?
Exactly. That's actually, and like, that's something that, so I've now been at Mixpanel for a year. And so even in like our product releases, we're getting to the point where we're really building this, this process for our go-to-market strategy on product releases. I guess it's not really product launches, just one product, just features. Right. But even there, like the externalization of like, how do you, I think like that's actually part of kind of tangential, but like also in the same like thread of like, how do you show up for your ICP? Like, how does it all kind of fit under these campaigns? It's like, even at the product release level, it's like, what does this solve for? Who does this solve for? How do we bucket it under one of these campaigns? Do we create, do we have like, are we now kind of like, is this in support of a new segment if we want to now target this new group of people? And so I think like, what you said, because we haven't even gotten to the content and messaging yet, Jonathan, but it's like
scratching the surface.
It's like, I mean, but it's like it's at every level of like it's how you think about the content that's supporting. It's not just like the ebooks or the blogs. It's like, how does the product support this person through? How do we make sure that shows up for this audience, that they're getting that they're aware and that they're using it? So we can do a whole, we can go.
I know. We'll have to move on. All right. So we've got like, if everyone can visualize, we've got the layer, we've talked about targeting. Now clearly there's a whole bunch of stuff to talk about there, how to do it, how to pick it, all sorts of things. We probably do that in another episode. All right. So then it goes to the theme, right? I think was the next one. Correct me if I'm wrong. And so I'll probably butcher your definition of the way that you were defining themes. So maybe I'll let you kind of take the lead there, and then I have a couple thoughts to myself on this one. This is interesting.
Yeah. So, I mean, the theme is essentially just like, it's taking the positioning for these audience, for the targeting. It's taking the value prop. It's kind of summarizing that into this, like, okay, when you're doing this planning, like, how do you want to actually, like, what is the general theme of what we're going to solve for this group of people? And so it's like, what is the core message that we're going to try to get across using, the different programs that we bake out underneath this, using the different tactics that will go underneath this. Like part of going through this exercise with your cross-functional peers as well is that, again, it's like, this is like, who's really leading this? It's like, we need PMM, product marketing, like corporate marketing, like they're really helping be like, okay, like, how do we actually bundle this into what the core message that we're going to try to get across to this audience is? Right. And so theme, it's typically something that you want to stick to for like the themes typically are like for the full fiscal year, if not a few quarters. A lot of there's also like the timing piece to this campaign hierarchy, right? It's like a theme will run, it has to run for a little bit longer. It's not something that's just one and done. It's you're going to be planning for this because you need a few quarters to actually understand, like, are we getting this message across to the audience?
Right. I'll put you on the spot. Does Mixpanel have this theme well defined within a campaign yet, or is that still coming together, you'd say? But just maybe give an example, or if not Mixpanel, another of like what that might be.
Actually, so I think that for our startup segment, we've really gotten to this place where we've nailed the theme. And right now that what we're going after is we essentially back in early August, we launched a 2.0 version of our startup program. It's actually not 2.0, it's probably like 4.0. We've actually had our startup program for quite some time, and in this last iteration that we just launched was to finally get our startup program as sort of like this always on evergreen campaign. It's something that has gone through this framework of this is an important segment for us. These founders are an important segment for us because part of investing in a startup program, especially for Mixpanel, it's we want to be long-term greedy. Like this is us like actually showing up saying, founders, you have everything you need. And the theme that came from this is we help you find that product market fit.
Yeah.
And so everything that we build underneath this, the content, the tactics, the campaigns, it's all around how are we continuously helping. We've now built templates for these users, like in product templates that are, here's like plug into events. You now get like 12 different reports that show you the different company KPIs. Great.
Right.
Now you can start showing your investors how you're getting product market fit, because you're understanding how your users are showing up in your product. And so it's like it becomes a little bit of that, like almost, especially in the startup program, like almost inception like. But it's still in this, because it's like we're helping the product people find product market fit with our product analytics. But it's this was sort of like our first like guinea pig, like can we launch a global initiative under a similar hierarchy where now it has that buy-in across the board. And so it's like people know, it's like, okay, great, like what's the next program coming up for this initiative? How are we getting closer? And like I think my favorite part is that, again, that content, it extends beyond just like a blog that we release. It's the how do we help them in the product find product market fit? How are we helping them? We also released, I think at the end of last year, a guide to like what are the metrics that investors want to see when they're pitching. And it's just like, here it is, ready to go. And so it's like it provides that north star of like how you build your content around supporting the theme. So
right. Yeah, exactly. And I mean, I think it's so important too, because I mean, ultimately at the end of the day, what you want is that consistent theme across channel. And I think these are the situations where I always see, you know, companies, especially in that earlier stage, Series A, Series B, and it's like, oh yeah, just go figure out what works on XYZ channel. And granted, like audiences behave differently on different channels. There's some people that are more active on other channels, et cetera, et cetera. But at the end of the day, you don't want one message here, one message there, another message over here, to the exact same person. You have to make sure it's consistent down from email, organic, paid, the works. And then again, make those decisions to change, because as you know, I mean, it'd be cool if this was, you know, a B2C world where we sold $10 products, right? And you just kind of jumped in and people said, boom, okay, sign the credit card, I'm ready to go. But a lot of times for your bigger, you know, deals that are a little bit higher transaction value, there's going to be multiple touches along the journey. And you're not going to have this instant one little ad that ended up working over the other, this one piece of content. It's going to be a multitude of things and a core theme and message that was iterated over a period of time. For example, you guys getting your messaging out around startups, and how you support them with templates and all other things like that. You know, they may not need Mixpanel right now, but I bet you if you continue bringing that message over time, and it is something that they want to hear and it's valuable based on customer research you've done, when they are in market, you'll have a full pipeline. You'll have people signing up for the free trial of Mixpanel, converting into paid, so on and so forth. You know, so I think those things are just so important. But anything we missed on theme, or am I missing something there before you?
No, I think that's everything.
Yeah. All right. So then we have programs, and I think programs, I mean, so the idea, so we've talked targeting, theme, programs, and programs for you, I believe the way you thought about it is with regards to more the content itself, or we had value props. I think it was value props is the way you put it. Yeah. So you had the overarching theme and then the core value props, which are more specific messages that might be layered throughout the campaign. Because of course, you know, Mixpanel and many other products do more than just one thing. They serve more than one outcome. So there's different things we might want to communicate. So how do we break that down? And like, what's too many, you know, because there's all sorts of things you can get lost, right? And all sorts of things. I feel like it'd be interesting to figure out how do we scale that down? Because I think everyone gets the idea of what a value prop is, but how do you think about that?
Yeah. And I think this is where it starts kind of getting into the like planning cycle. Like, how are you staffed? Like, what can you actually accomplish? And there's nothing worse than getting into the game of like doing too much, like you're not executing well. I think like as marketers, like that's the balance I think we're always trying to fight and find is where we, you know, able to do the best work, and like what's that limit. And so for us, programs, and I think I sort of alluded to it a little bit when I was talking about the content that we started creating for the startup program, but underneath this theme is really, if the theme was, you know, we help startups find product market fit, the programs underneath that are going to be those sections, those types of content. So it's like we can start with, okay, let's get them set up on their company KPIs, actually getting into the product, understanding, getting to value within the product. Like that can be the focus of this first program. That's all in support of, and then they will also be like on their way to finding this product market fit. And so essentially these programs that we build underneath it, they're also leveraging some of those like perceptions that we're trying to change. At like I was kind of talking about how it's like you kind of have like, you have the corporate marketing side, you have the product marketing side, you have like this like mix of like this blend of messages that you want to get out to this audience in these programs. Essentially, I like to think of them as like how you actually time box your theme across the fiscal year, or like across whatever you're trying to plan for, because essentially like you want to go sort of program at a time in order to be able to start testing out that message. How are you showing up for each of those, for each of the campaigns that fall underneath that? It's not something that you can go off and I mean, not at the like level of like the companies I've been working at where, you know, Mixpanel right now, we're only about like 375 people, I think, if not 400, but it's like our marketing team is 12 people. We're not staffed. We're not staffed to do that. I mean, maybe larger companies are like, great, there's a marketing function for each of the programs that fall underneath these themes.
That'd be nice.
But it's like, but it's like for us, it's like, great, let's start program number 1. Let's really focus on, okay, Q3, like, let's really get after like this company KPIs, helping our ICP understand, like, these startups understand, okay, to get to product market fit, like here's the KPIs I need to be looking at. Here's all the content that will then support us getting there. And so you'll see that tie-in, I think, between like the program and the actual campaigns that fall underneath it, because really, I mean, the campaigns are the extension of the program, of like what it'll actually show up as. And so
would it be, to interrupt you, would it be like, so there's a company, Clixies. I always see them. You probably know Clixies too. If not, then we'll probably Google them right now, and then you'll be retargeting their list of videos and all sorts of things. But I mean, to give an example there, like a concrete example, I don't know exactly. I did have the head of acquisition on the podcast a while back. Didn't get completely clear on this type of conversation, but the theme for them, I think, would probably be something like fraudulent clicks cost money. Right? It's like some overarching thing. And I mean, you could make it sound more fancy and get a little bit deeper into that being the theme. But then there's, you know, sub messages underneath that of potentially the why and some of the questions and the pain points, and then the outcome of, all right, well, what do Clixies do? Well, it stops fraudulent clicks. That might be one thing you do. And there might be across different channels and all sorts of things in terms of the messages. And you can break those down into little buckets, but they all roll up to the theme of what they want to communicate to the market, which is right now they want all marketers to know that if they don't have Clixies, then they could be wasting money on fraudulent clicks. And so to me, like, they're in a pretty cool space because they've got a very niche as far as I know about Clixies, it does really kind of one core thing. So if you're a multi-feature, multi-product company, it gets a little bit more difficult, clearly. But would that be a good example in your mind, or would you break it down differently in the Clixies world between like theme and then program, kind of talking about value props?
Yeah, I think I'm also a believer in like you kind of make this hierarchy work for however you have your ICP. But I think in the general theme of that, like taking each of those segments of like, I mean, like what is Clixie solving for? Who, like, how do you get around like getting that message across into your ICP? Like all of those different pieces, you kind of bake it out into programs, and then the campaigns underneath it really end up being like the collection of the tactics. Like maybe you're going to run a paid program on on one of those like value props that they have as to like who they
Right.
are and what they do. Maybe the field team is going to take on, and I'm kind of jumping ahead into like what are the campaigns
Sure, go
underneath
for it.
it.
We can jump
But
down. It's okay.
but
Go for
it's
it.
like underneath, because it's like really like the program is the collection of the campaigns. Essentially, like
Yep.
you're doing the collection of those different initiatives from the different folks because you want to like get like that
Got
program
it.
that rolls up
Okay.
into it all kind of cascades, right? And so it's like you have a paid program that's going to be on obviously multiple paid channels. There's like in the support of that one value prop
Right.
coordinated effort there. You then have like a global roadshow for this quarter
Hmm.
that's going to be centered around here's the value prop again. That again, same one that we're going to try to do on paid, but now also we have this element of a new channel. It's going to be hosted by our field marketing teams, and then it's like, okay, great. And now also we can do like an ongoing, like now we want to figure out how do we get people like from our site into like our CRM and like build out a
Right.
journey for those that are a little bit more maybe like a higher intent. Maybe they're more ready
Sure.
to understand. So it's like within these like within the value props, or I guess like looking again
Yeah.
at the template, it's like the program is a collection of campaigns. I like to use them as like this is how you're talking within your marketing org of like, are we all
Right.
aligned? Are we working on the
Right.
same thing, trying to get the same message across? And something that you said is actually something that I always say is just like really the whole purpose of showing up as this coordinated effort is because if you're not showing up with the same message across all of these different channels, you won't know. Like, you don't actually know then if your message is
Right.
resonating, is actually helping you convert more,
Agreed.
is doing any of these other things. And so that's, I think, why we have these programs, because it's like, great, we all are bought in that we want to show up for this
Right.
specific part of the core message we're going to try to get across.
Right, exactly. Well, I think something that's also interesting too is that, so to your point, I mean, theme, you've got a couple different messages, and then I again think about it. Maybe this is kind of blurring the lines between programs and campaigns, not to make it too buzzwordy or, whatever, right? I mean, I feel
Yeah.
like we don't want to overcomplicate this. It doesn't need to be overcomplicated. And I think a
Yeah.
visual, honestly, would be great if people could see that. But then you've got the specific content and actual messaging that then supports that one message underneath the theme. And everything just kind of rolls up into a cool hierarchy where everything makes sense. So to me, like that's pretty straightforward. The other thing I think is interesting too is that, a lot of times it's really helpful to use a lot of internal data from either your CRM or financial system to understand which messages are potentially resonating across a specific feature or product. And a good
Yes.
example of this is Clearbit's a multi-product company. But for a while, they have run this one ad that I know, and I've talked to Colin about it, and they push it a lot, is firmographic targeting on Facebook. And so I think I know them very well for that. Of course, everyone knows them for lead form enrichment and other things like that. They pushed that for a while, but I think a big thing's been that firmographic targeting on Facebook, and they've pushed that message very, very consistently over many months. And the reason is because they did some data hunting with their financial systems and their CRM, because data was in multiple places, and found that most people actually started their journey with Clearbit by using data to target people on Facebook. And so they decided to push more of that message because they knew that was a better entry point into the product. And so
Yeah.
I'm always trying to ask that of clients we work with is, what are the key things when they come in the phone inbound, right? And they're excited. What are they asking about? What do they want to know more about? Mixpanel does 1,000 cool things, I'm sure. But I bet you there's really 3 or 4 that are the things that they always mention on the first portion of that call. And so when I'm thinking about acquisition, I'm thinking about how do I figure out those few core things? And this is always the goal of testing. And really, it's not just about like the ad channel, what the ad channel says. It's also about just looking at the data in your CRM,
Right.
looking at what they're saying on calls and those types of things, so that you can say, hey, great, we know for a fact that this is what they're excited about all the time, because sales reps will know it. I mean, they do thousands of these calls, right? It's like, oh, yeah, this is exactly what they want. Or the support team, if it's a PLG thing and they're coming through, they're going to ask questions about things. They're going to go through the chat. So I don't know. Do you agree with that? I have another thought.
No, I mean, no, I think like what you're talking about is what helps build those different campaigns underneath it. It's like how are we
Yeah.
furthering to support it? And I agree. I think um even for me, like totally, totally transparently, it's like I need that reminder. Like
Yeah.
I need that reminder of like, hey, like as we think about like what's in our evergreen, like how do we make sure we continue to refresh that with like, okay, well, actually, like let's look back at what happened. Like maybe this was our evergreen
Right.
content, like from a year ago, which I mean, yeah, like that is when we, like shade
Yeah.
right now, but it's
Sure.
like, yes, like that is when it was the evergreen because it was the best performing, but it's like, where are the opportunities to optimize that? And I think
Right.
like that's where I say like, again, all of this, like these tools, like this hierarchy template, it's like use it as what it is. It's a framework for getting your mindset
Sure.
there, but I think that nothing ever is more powerful than just actually like talking to your users, like hearing
100%.
what they have to say, understanding like what is clicking, like what is that one reason that they're showing up. And so and I think like one of the exciting things here at Mixpanel is like we're at the forefront of really like we can can go into the product and like literally
Hmm.
look and see like what are people doing. We're really, I think like one of the things that's really exciting for us is, especially on the marketing side, it's like it's not an attribution game here at Mixpanel. It's very much, and it has to start from the top down real, like I mean it has
Hmm.
to be like at least like spearheaded, and there's no one more than like our CEO who's just like everything you do in service of our customer and a better customer experience. And
Right.
so what that unlocks for us is to, outside of this framework also, I mean with this framework, but what we're working on is for like the excitement of our customers and our prospective
Yeah.
customers. And so that also, I mean, and that means like being able to surface or being able to, work on the campaigns that are going to help them get those answers quicker.
Well, and
So
that's a really, I mean, thank God for your CEO. I mean that opens up the opportunities for doing many things that you might not be able to do earlier. In terms of creating the content that they really want to consume versus just creating content with the means of generating a lead or a
yeah,
contact or an email address. And
yep,
as soon as you establish that goal at the front end of, hey, ultimately all we want to do is better serve our customers, help them out, give them exactly what they need so they understand product analytics and everything that's happening inside their product, blah 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 blah. I know Mixpanel does more. And so the better that we can create content around that, the more likely they're going to be, the more likely they're going to read it and then think of Mixpanel in the future. And I think that's the important thing,
exactly.
because if all content shouldn't just be created with the goal of getting someone's email address, it should be ultimately the goal of answering a pain or a question and giving them stuff that they couldn't get anywhere else, but they can get it from Mixpanel, so that again they constantly come back and say, wow, these guys just absolutely kill it, and you guys are the leaders. There's no one else in the space that they can think about other than Mixpanel. And I think that's always the goal for us as marketers, so that when they are in market, like we were talking about before, in say 2-3 quarters from now, boom, they're coming in.
Yep.
So yeah, I love that. That's great to have that support. I bet you that makes your job
Yeah,
a hell of a lot
it just
easier.
leaves my problems to data quality.
I mean, easy,
Yeah,
easy in
that's
quotations.
that's another
Yeah,
podcast episode.
yeah. Right, right. Well, cool. I think we almost nailed it in
Yeah.
45, not quite, but I know I think we breezed through that, but I'm going to definitely share the visual. But as a quick recap, I mean, it's targeting at the top, theme, programs, campaigns, and channels. And I think I'll leave just a couple of notes, and maybe if you want to close us out, if you have any other thoughts that I miss here. But the big thing is, this framework can be used for specific segments or slices of your ICP. It could be used even for a broader campaign, just organize core messaging. But at the end of the day, like, we want to make sure that the channels, the distribution channels we're using, whether it's paid, unpaid, or whatever, are aligned in what they're doing. We shouldn't have one doing something completely different and one doing another. They have to be coordinated. Otherwise, you can't really look at the overall inbound funnel and say, hey, well, we know we went to market with this type of messaging for this X amount of months, and it worked, if you've got
Yeah.
all sorts of things happening. And so I think that creates a lot of clarity. And then I also think that creating that framework and writing it down, whether it's in a Miro board or whether it's on a Google Doc, whatever format you want to put it in, creates a lot of great alignment, because you said at the beginning, we didn't spend much time on this, but this isn't just a marketing type of exercise. This is talking with product marketing, product, the CEO, the whole team. And so writing all those things down, saying, all right, hey guys, as the demand gen leader, here's my plan, here's what I'm going to do, and making sure that that aligns with the broader vision of like what we're trying to accomplish is so important. So then you can be like, boom, signed off, they check marked it, they signed it in blood, and this is our plan. So that's my kind of summary wrap. Maybe you've got some additional thoughts that I missed or anything that people might be thinking about.
Yeah,
anything you want to close out on, or
thoughts? And I think I just said it, but I'm happy to say it again, of just like, you use a framework as, a means to even start these conversations. A lot of the times, like when you have a framework, it's just like, how do I get started? You start with one and really just paring it down, start having those open conversations with your product marketing counterparts. If you don't have a product marketing counterpart, honestly, it's whoever is going to be like helping you kind of decide, like, this is the investment, like this is the marketing investment of like, how do we want to really show that our product is for this audience? A lot of the times, companies might have some level of positioning. It's like, who's using the positioning document? Like, where is that actually being used? It's like, point it here, like use it for this.
Buried in G Drive, lost. Who knows where it is?
And I've seen that so many times. So it's like this is, again, it's like, it doesn't have to be like a start from scratch. It can be, leverage what you have. And a lot of this is about, especially in my experience, like I've been again, primarily working in these smaller B2B SaaS orgs, typically under 500 people. It's about like just using the resources at hand, and then you're surfacing up the content that like your product marketing and product and everyone's kind of already thinking. You follow that up with that customer research, those gong calls, those like conversations with the sales team on like, hey, like, I think this is like an actual like bet for us to take on like going after this audience. And it's like, well, you already had this positioning. Like, did we check if it works? Like, should we like pop it into this framework and like, let's plan some coordinated efforts across the marketing org on how we show up. And so I think there's just nothing more than just like actually going and trying this for yourself and like building it to whatever fits your org. So highly recommend that.
Make it your own. Make it your own. No framework or playbook fits everyone. You use it as a guide, and you add the little bits and pieces that make it work for you. So I said it well. Well, thanks so much for jumping on for a little bit. If people want to check you out, I'm sure LinkedIn or go to Mixpanel are probably the best places to go, right?
Mixpanel.com. So.
Yeah. Cool. Well then until next time, we'll have to probably do for sure another episode on something where we just probably hit one of these topics. So maybe we'll do that. We packed a lot into one, but I think it was good, and we'll make sure to share the
absolutely. Thank you so much, Jonathan.